Football for me, it means people. Everyone who's involved for the right reasons. They want to play because they love the game, they want to be involved, and it brings connection between everyone, whether it's standing on the sides, whether it's in the crowd, just watching and not playing.
And with football being for everyone, whether you're a coach, a player, an aspiring player for the future, someone seeking a scholarship, a teacher, a youth worker, a professional, a volunteer, someone seeking to get involved in the game, a volunteer parent, whether they're reflecting on their journey and how they can understand their grassroots team, an aspiring academy coach yourself, no matter what and no matter where you're listening, this podcast is really for you. On the Reflective Coach podcast, there are so many wonderful guests that feature on a podcast, whether this is former professionals, current professionals, and professionals of all backgrounds within the Coaching Insight series that really inspire, understand, support, and are reflective amongst this journey as they share their own insights, experiences, their own journey, their own reflections, strategies, insights, and other stories into the Reflective Coach podcast. Each week features a new guest, and each new guest brings something new to the podcast. I've been so lucky to have so many wonderful guests on, and you can really listen to all the episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and Podcast Addict, with continuous updates on Twitter and LinkedIn. By subscribing, commenting, following, engaging with all the posts amongst social media, you can really keep up to date with all the episodes.
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I would just say, like, my job is to make sure, like, these kids are okay. Like, I've always been a big proponent of, not just being a coach, but also being someone that they could come talk to. And I've been coaching basketball for about 10 years now. And yeah, I mean, I just look to see how well they play together as a group. I've been very, very fortunate to cover high school basketball and take some of the things I learned back to my group. And the same with soccer since I restarted coaching soccer this year. I love to see how people play together as a group, how they listen and get feedback from their coaches and apply it in real time. Well, I keep telling my boss that I'm going to remain his youth minister until I'm not cool enough and young enough to be a youth minister anymore. So, I think, like, looking ahead to the next, like, 10 years or so, I don't think I'm ever going to not coach. Coaching is just such a big part of my life. And that was really a big part of my lifeline when I moved down to Florida and I was, all by myself in a new area where I didn't know anybody. And I was able to get in on the girls' basketball team down there. And
Good, glad to see you.
I'm not used to using Google Meet, so.
That's right, no problems at all. You're a podcaster, you're a content creator, you're a journalist, you're a coach. The background is ongoing, so it feels more as if I'm being interviewed by you with your experiences. So I hope that Google meets the need. But thank you for joining. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this.
No problems at all. And just to start off, I always love the flags in the background. And certainly the good selection of clubs and countries that are portrayed on them, which is always a great one for sure. Oh, look at them, even better. So each of those represent a bit of a background and who you are realistically from, some of the reading that I've done. So there is Russian blood within you, I believe, if I'm correct within that sense. So that's a representation of that one. And, there's more to go with each of them, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a lot of... This is pretty much like I kind of I like obsessively organized. So this is my, like, men's soccer wall. Like I have a totally like a women's soccer wall at home. And then a couple from the ones like that like championships I've gone to, stuff that have like dates on it. But this is pretty much like my men's soccer wall, and then I needed another one, so I threw the Russia one up there. Yeah.
A great selection for sure. So how's your day gone so far?
Good. It's been busy. I mean, it's fun. Got to see the kids at the school, which was nice. It's always fun. it's a busy life I live, but it really doesn't feel like work.
And that's the best when it doesn't feel like work, although you're busy and then you're getting through every day. And, it's more enjoyment than going, oh, when's the end of the day, or what's a payday, or another dollar, another day, as they say. It's even better, it's even more fulfilling, and it's led you down a great path, which makes it even more enjoyable, both life and professionally.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I definitely don't feel like I'm working.
So, if you were to give an introduction to yourself, some background and some experience, how would you delve into that, and how would you start off then?
I think I would just say so I'm Rachel. I'm from Beaver County, Pennsylvania, and in the United States. I love Beaver County. We have a saying out here that everybody knows everybody, or everybody's related to everybody, and that is so true. But yeah, I'm from Beaver County. I've pretty much lived my whole life here. I was born overseas in Russia. Came over here when I was like real little. I was raised by two awesome parents. Grew up, went to college and everything. Got my background, my excuse me, my undergraduate um, in journalism from a smaller school here in Pennsylvania, and then I went to another school in downtown Pittsburgh for a master's in media. And then I kind of had a change of heart and a change of a career, and decided I wanted to work with kids in a religious setting. And I became a youth minister. And so my first job actually took me all the way down to Florida. I lived in Florida for about a year before I came back home. And now I'm working at Mary Queen of Saints, which is just an amazing parish with awesome people and awesome students. And I'm working full time as a youth minister, but I still get that. I get that love of media too, because I'm actually a 2-for-1 deal, and I'm the parish communications director, and also, I write for the local paper, and then I write for a women's soccer website. I do a little bit of podcasting for a men's soccer website. So pretty much do a little bit of everything. And the best thing I can say to people about myself is I don't really sleep, and I don't really stop moving.
I love that, and certainly what a background and what a combination. Because when you speak to many different people, or many coaches or journalists within that background, when they come to it, they might have an amalgamation of different variations, and sometimes they don't throw up that they are a youth minister and put a religious aspect into it. So when it comes to that religion, obviously, which is part of the wall as well, as you can see on the cross, which I really do love as well, being a Catholic myself and taking religion quite to my heart in terms of the sense of that outlook. But what led you to being a youth minister? Where does that aspect of religion and background and that passion come from?
Yeah, so I was raised Catholic. I was born and raised Catholic. And I did the whole 8 years of Catholic school education. And when I was younger, the parish that I'm actually working at, we have a school which is where I went to school. So I'm working where I went to school, which is pretty awesome. And not a lot of people can say they do that. That's where I coach basketball and soccer. And yeah, I didn't really appreciate it when I was younger. And as I got older, and I got into high school and I got into college, I realized how important it was to me, my Catholic faith. And so I started doing a lot of reading about it. And then one day I had gotten laid off from a marketing job, and I was talking with one of my best friends who is a priest, and I said, I really don't know what to do with my life. And he was like, well, you like working with students, and you love your faith, so maybe you could try to combine the two. And so I was kind of shadowing at my old parish I used to attend, the youth minister there, and just kind of seeing the what goes into it. And I really started to like it, and I prayed a lot about it. And there was a big merging process happening in the Diocese of Pittsburgh. And so I knew if that was the path that I wanted to go down, I would have to move and get some experience somewhere else. And so I did that. And then I came back home and have been able to be a youth minister in my hometown, which has been awesome. But yeah, I just a lot of conversation with friends, a lot of time praying about it, and it just seemed like the right calling. And even though I have had a couple jobs in just about 2.5 years. I finally found the parish where I belong and found my footing, and I'm definitely a much more confident youth minister than I was about 2 years ago.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're more confident, and I love that you say about the calling and that passion which has really taken you where you are, and that reflection upon when you're younger that you might not appreciate it as much, but as you get older, you look into it more, and then have more of a feel. But I also love that you're working where you went to school, and I was in a similar position last year where I was working at the school that I went to, and made a difficult decision to leave to teach elsewhere. But I know what it's like when you're back there because you feel that sense of complete belonging. You know when the youngsters come through what they're going to go through, and you have that even more understanding and passion for them to uphold the standards which we went through, and certainly seeing that now as a member of staff, the importance and the lifestyle which they'll go through, and maybe that they might not appreciate it as well. So how can we maximise their opportunities whilst they're there? So I love that combination and where it's led you, and certainly being a youth minister, that is certainly an interesting life aspect and consideration. And even though you've got this full combination in terms of communications director, youth minister, you coach a bit of soccer, coach a bit of basketball, you do some writing and journalism, some content, you cover a wide array in terms of your journalistic background and what you do. So when it comes to that, there's a lot of balancing acts sort of going on here because of the range. So when it comes to, say, the future, and even though you're at and what you're enjoying, is there sort of a line where you're going to go down where it's more towards the faith, more towards teaching, more towards, say, content and journalism, or more coaching? Is there a certain path which you're going down, or is it enjoy this as much as you can and try to hold on to as much as you can?
Well, I keep telling my boss that I'm going to remain his youth minister until I'm not cool enough and young enough to be a youth minister anymore. So, yeah, I think like looking ahead to the next like 10 years or so, I don't think I'm ever going to not coach. Coaching is just such a big part of my life. And that was really a big part of my lifeline when I moved down to Florida, and I was, all by myself in a new area where I didn't know anybody. And I was able to get in on the girls' basketball team down there, and that really, helped me just have something to do, so I'm not sitting at home every single night or going out and doing dumb things. Like I had that to kind of ground me. But I could never not see myself coaching. I would like to try in the next couple of years to get into the high school ranks. I've been coaching middle school now. This is my 10th year coaching middle school. And as much as I love it, I am ready for that next challenge of potentially doing a high school job, whether it's as an assistant or a head coach, preferably in basketball. I do love coaching soccer, but I don't think I could coach soccer at a high school level. I just know my limitations when it comes to that. But yeah, job wise, I mean, I'll always have like that media aspect of my life. And, as long as they'll keep me here at the parish, I plan on staying. But if not, I would love to get back into newspapers. Marketing wasn't really quite for me, but newspapers and stuff. I've been fortunate to be a freelancer for the local paper here and cover high school sports. So really been enjoying that. And, if the opportunity ever opens up to do that full time, 10, 15 years down the road, I would certainly consider it.
Well, I think that's sort of a great route to look down, but it does give you options which you can sort of pinball off if one doesn't work out in life, or you need to pick something else up elsewhere, considering in terms of where life may be, you having kids or a family at a time, or whatever may crop up in life and wherever the future is going to go. And when it comes, say, to living life and obviously being this passionate towards faith, does your faith sort of guide you in terms of your life decisions and what you do over more than anything else, or is it playing a big part in your life? But you also consider the considerations of life and what might kick up at times, which might take us away from our faith.
Yeah, I think it definitely has a big, overview into my life. I always, anytime I have to make a big decision, I always pray about it. I always try to take some time to get into the Adoration Chapel. I'm very fortunate to have young clergy around me. The parish I work at, we have 3 priests, and they're all under the age of 40. So they're all younger, they're all around my age, we're all millennials. And so, when I talk to them, I can talk to them. I say, okay, put on your friend hat. Okay, put on your priest hat. And so I have that nice balance too of really just having the accessibility to talk to people who are clergy and who are religious. I have a couple friends who are who are sisters or consecrated and living in the world, and so I have a lot of friends who are really good faithfully and have really good faith lives and are just completely accessible to talk to, and that's been a huge boost for me.
I think that's great when you have people around your age and understanding where you're at within life, and having the opportunity to talk to them and really connect to them, as you said, which is really important, especially when life throws up considerations. And we may be at a crossroads where you're at, for example, because you have so many different routes which you can go down. You can have that consideration, that conversation where when they're around your age, they might have those same thought processes and same reflections, whereby they might be at a crossroads and therefore they've eliminated a few, and we can take those experiences into our thought processes in terms of how that benefits us. I certainly know where I'm at with it as well, and that leads to sort of one of my questions, because when it comes to it, I teach full time. I'm a football, soccer coach. I do the podcast now, and then I've got a background in some other experiences that I'd like to look at. So I'm a bit of a crossroads. Like, do I want to teach for the rest of my life? Do I want to teach for 10 years? Do I want to go back into coaching full time? Do I want to branch out and go into, say, journalism and content creation a little bit more? So it is that crossroads. And then I do think to myself, well, some people really are alluded to what they want to do in the future. Boom, they're on that path. They go, they study, they work hard, and they have that success and they achieve those levels. And I think if you're at a crossroads, will you achieve the levels which they have at certain points by being at a crossroads? Because it might delay us in getting certain places, although we are picking up more experiences. So it can be a good position to be at, to have those people around you, but in our mental aspects, it can be a hard place to be as well when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think you completely hit the nail on the hammer with that. I mean, it's just a lot of it is balance, and a lot of it is just kind of figuring out what you want to do. And my mom always tells me, don't burn the candle at both ends, but I'd rather be busy than not busy. For me, having basketball practice 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, that's my enjoyment. I would rather do that than just sitting on the couch and watching TV for hours. Although you still need time for that too. So yeah, it's all about balancing.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with you. And whilst you touch upon balancing and where you're going within life, as well as that calling, at the end of your life, or when we get to that point, which is always a big consideration of mine, when we do get to that and we get to reflect and we say we're having this conversation at a contemporary time with those ghosts around us, or the future in terms of the ghosts, because we don't actually know who's there. When it comes to saying what your purpose is and will be or has been, what would you like it to say? And is that a big consideration in terms of what you're doing now, in terms of approaching the work that you do with the kids, the young people, to making sure, right, I hit that purpose today. Yes, I'm doing that today. So what is that purpose that you bring alongside that calling?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I would just say, like, my job is to make sure, like, these kids are okay. Like, I've always been a big proponent of, not just being a coach, but also being someone that they could come talk to. And I've been coaching basketball for about 10 years now, and I've had, oh gosh, anywhere from 80 to 100 kids. And I think out of those potential 80 to 100, I probably have had one-on-one conversations with about 45, 50 of them. And I say all the time, whether it's the kids that I coach or the kids that I have for youth ministry, like, it's my responsibility to be a safe and trusted person you can come to and give you a safe and trusting environment. I have a lot of people at my job who are like, well, why don't you do more with, religion? Why do you do 75% social and 25%, catechetical teaching? And I say, well, these kids just need a safe place to hang out. And at the end of the day, like, the world is crazy. There's a lot of tough influences in the world. There's a lot of, there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's all kinds of stuff. And so basketball, the youth center where the youth group is located, I mean, that's just a safe place for kids to come hang out and just be kids and have fun. And that's, I think that's my job is to give them a good environment and to be, I don't need like a good role model, yes, but also just like someone that they can go to. Like, I don't ever want a student to say, I feel like I couldn't talk to Coach Rachael about the XYZ. Like, I tell the kids all the time, like, you can talk to me about anything.
I think that's really important as well, being able to approach you as well as understanding what it's like to be in that environment, and that they can talk about certain elements and issues, whilst being able to approach you as that role model, as that responsible person, and what your purpose, what your job is, and that responsibility that comes into it in that combination. And so when it does come to saying, as you know, looking at children and saying, all right, we want a kid to be a kid, we want them to have fun, we want them to be in this environment. When it comes into saying, unpacking that a little bit more, what is a kid? What would you like to see, or what fulfills you when you look at an individual and you go, yes, that makes them a kid? Because there's times when I work with some secondary school students, I'm like, yep, they're getting a little bit older now. They're starting to, endorse, say, drugs a little bit. They're starting to partake in alcohol. They're starting to party. They're starting to find, say, sexual partners and all this sort of consideration. And when I see some of the young students that I work with, and they're still very young in life, whereby they're not considering any of that, and they're looking forward to Christmas more than some other kids on the aspect of, oh yeah, the enjoyment of Christmas, or they get to look at a game for the fun aspects, or they see the fun within things. And so when it comes to saying, working with the participants and the individuals that you have, what makes them a kid? What fulfills you when you're working with them?
I think just like seeing them have fun. Like, we had a trivia competition this past week at youth group, and these kids were just so competitive and just, they were, talking trash, and they were, oh, I'm winning, I'm beating you, and like just having fun, and like just the laughter. I mean, it really is, laughter is the best medicine. And I had an older brother who was really involved in starting in high school with the drinking and the drugs and the negative influences. And I just want to see them have what they didn't have, what he didn't have, and just a safe place to be around, and just a place where they can have fun. Like, when these kids crack me up, like, they are so funny. And just watching them laugh with each other and interact with each other, it is awesome. And the same goes for basketball too. Like, we tell the girls all the time, we want you guys to have fun. We want you guys to take this seriously, but we also just want you to have fun. Like, you're still in middle school. This is not the WNBA. This is not the NCAA tournament. Like, this is a place for you guys to work on your skills, and I hope they want to win games. But at the same time, this is a place for them to just have fun and be with their friends.
I think that's really important components that you bring into play. And if you were to be offered, say, a head coach role, or move into a full time capacity of that role within coaching or any element of that, I think if you were to bring a youth group into play alongside, you have the team, they have their program, they're there to play, they get training, they get games. But if you were to bring in, say, a youth group session just once a week, where it isn't about training, isn't about playing games, but just getting together as a group, looking at the fun side, looking at what the youths enjoy these days, even if it's just to put an Xbox or a PlayStation there, and then have, ping pong in the background, I think that serves as such an important aspect, which is so beneficial, which will bond your team a little bit more, which will allow them to come together, which will allow them to create memories, as well as having that safe space, that role model, which you are, away from coaching. And then even if you left coaching or were relieved or anything like that happened, the importance within that role that you play as that role model, as that person who connects with them, within that fun element, within that component that still exists, even if the program doesn't work out for them, or if they don't want to pursue sport anymore, that is such an important point, which I think can be taken away not only from what you do in your job, but for any coaches, any professional out there, to really combine that and create a pathway for young people that exists to really benefit them.
That's something that we just started doing this year, and a lot of it is because at the parish we are very lucky to have. So there used to be a house where clergy would live, and it's no longer in use. So we made it into a youth center, and something we're starting to do this season in basketball is we're going to have team bonding nights. And I said, okay, our first team bonding night is going to be in a couple weeks, and we're going to do gingerbread houses and make Christmas cookies. So they still get that, competitiveness against each other, because I have a very competitive group of girls. But at the same time, it's just time for them to have fun, kick back, relax, enjoy the youth center, and hang out.
I love that, and I think that's really important how you bring that into play and what you've done this season as well. And so we touched upon, say, the background, the life story, where you're at, the religion, and not much upon the coaching so far or where you're at. But it's been nice to get that background. And when I speak to a lot of coaches, especially who are based in the US, they have a big background in terms of what I research and what I see within that research of religious components, and they might quote something from the Bible or something from God within their bio, and I really love that, and I take that away, and I think that's something which we're starting to lack here in the UK a little bit more, is that importance of religion. So it's nice to touch upon it, especially from Catholic to Catholic, and how that plays into consideration. But with the basis of my questions, as someone who has such a huge array and background of content, of journalism, of writing, I've based this episode on a complete sort of switch around to base it upon you. So we will get round to the coaching insights, but from a journalist, from a media hat which you have, when it comes to saying, as a journalist covering youth sports games, what are the key considerations that you look for and that you cover when you're reviewing them?
You mean the athletes?
Yeah. Or the games
Yeah.
itself?
Yeah, I mean, so I just look to see how well they play together as a group. I've been very, very fortunate to cover high school basketball and take some of the things I learned back to my group. And the same with soccer, since I restarted coaching soccer this year. I love to see how people play together as a group, how they listen and get feedback from their coaches and apply it in real time. I'm not really the X's and O's type of coach, or type of reporter, to be honest with you. Numbers are not my thing. I usually have my boyfriend doing stats for me because I just cannot handle them. But I'm the type of person that looks for the story behind it, like the why. Yes, you need the X's and O's and you need the numbers, but I just like to see how people work together, and then how they can shine individually, and then how they shine together as a group. I've gotten to know some of these athletes. Beaver County is not a big area. I've been sent to, a couple schools only, maybe once or twice, and I've been sent to schools like 12, 13, 14 times. So just being able to form those relationships with the student athletes and their coaches has been awesome. And just being able to tell their stories has been really, really cool. But yeah, I would just say, like, working together as a team, and how you work because you can do so much individually, but at the end of the day, for soccer, there's 11 people on the pitch. In basketball, there's 5 people on the court. So it's all about how you work together.
I think that's such an important consideration, and the basis of the questions are sort of to form a supportive network for athletes, for families, for those backgrounds, to really approach it from a journalist and media sort of component, with that combination of someone who is a coach and has that experience. When you are observing that, and you look at how well they play, by your experiences and by what you'd like to see away from the X's and O's, what are your metrics for determining how well a team plays?
I think, obviously wins and losses is a big one, but at the same time, like, I've seen some teams who have been, winless throughout the whole year, but have still given a lot of effort, or maybe have given like 1 to 2 wins and still give a ton of effort and still work together really well. They just, maybe they just don't have the numbers. Maybe they're just playing against, individually better athletes. But I think just, that's a tough one, because I don't really quantify it based on like a bar, so to say. Like, it's just like how they work together and how that produces, like, for lack of a better phrase, goodness. How that produces, not arguing on the court with each other, not giving lip to the coach, like, just little things like that make a huge difference.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. So, on the basis of that, you are approaching games with that sort of open mindset rather than a metric-based mindset and perspective. And looking at, oh, the team played really well today because they took on board the instructions and they applied what they were able to give in those objectives and relay that within the practice. Or they played really well today because they connected an X amount of passes, which led to them developing a really great attacking sense of play, which was just great to sit back and watch and observe how players interacted. So it's those kind of considerations which you don't have to take metrics into play, but you can actually sit back naturally without an objective head on, look and review the game, enjoy what it is for itself, and then write up the content which preserves more of the enjoyment which comes into play rather than having this sort of rigid mindset whereby you are structured within the thinking all the time and takes that fun out of sport. Because as much as we do have metrics, as much as we do look at sports from certain angles, as much as it is quantified within certain stats, etc., it does take away the enjoyment from it. So when you can actually go in as a journalist and just enjoy a game and then write about it, I suppose that comes across in terms of more passion, more love, more enjoyment within your writing and how that portrays, rather than this rigid sort of approach and structure which you could take game by game, for example.
Yeah, I always usually like let the interviews do the talking for the story. Like, yeah, of course, like you need to get this player scored in this amount, like who got the assist, yada yada yada. But I always, I let the interviews kind of write the story itself. I'd rather write it based on what they're saying than what I'm seeing or what the stats are saying.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you there, and I think it's great to have that sense from it. And when it comes, say, with a large following on social media from how big the US game is, and seeing athletes all the time starting to crop up on my Twitter feed and seeing them come up more than regular and being tagged in certain posts and seeing the pursuit of, say, excellence, the pursuit of the professional game, I think they have such a tremendous following and they create and generate such a great buzz around what they do, especially at 14, 15, 16. I'm like, whoa, you are doing so well upon your social media campaigns and reaching out and building, which creates such great skill set and experience. But when it comes to that, say, large following and engagement for young players, what do you often see for them, and what opportunities do you believe need to be regulated for further support of those players, if any?
Well, I think when you talk about social media, the number one thing, and I tell my students this, whether they're in middle school or high school all the time, is if you wouldn't say it to your mom and your dad, then don't put it online. So many times you just see, even professional athletes to this day apologizing for things that they said, 10, 12 years on social media when they were dumb high school kids. And so if you wouldn't say it, to your mom and your dad and to grandma, then don't put it on social media. I have been tagged in a lot of highlight reels and game clips and stuff from local athletes, and I think that is the best way to do it. Tag who the media is, and they will spread the word. I mean, every time I see that, I smash retweet, even if it's for I get tagged from people all the way up in Butler County and Allegheny County, which, geographically speaking, are about an hour away from me. Schools that I don't cover when covering the local paper. So I still hit the retweet button because, I mean, these kids are doing the work. They know that I'm a soccer reporter, and so they're being smart. They're tagging the right people. And yeah, I think kids just, understanding what the audience is, keeping their social media clean. That's the best advice I can give.
And I think that's a really important component and concept to play, because there are so many considerations when it comes to that, especially for recruiters and what they see, for that verbal commitment which comes into play, how they engage. And I think, again, as a sport journalist and someone who looks at the enjoyment of the game, you can see how naturally these players or individuals are connecting, how they are communicating, how they're coming across. And therefore, if you're doing a bit of background research or you're observing players online, you can then see that in terms of person, how that may be slightly different because they might be more engaging online and therefore it doesn't hit their personality, or they have an opportunity to develop their personality on the pitch a little bit more, etc., because of what they portray online. So there is a lot of considerations in that, but I think it's so amazing how players are portrayed across the US game and what I see from abroad in the UK and how big it is, and I'm like, whoa, how cool is that? And it's something that the players over here are starting to do, especially at a younger age. And they're more sort of parent geared accounts more than anything. But I think that pure enjoyment of just seeing the players connect on their social media and what they share, I think is huge for the American game, and something that is so enjoyable to see from someone who's not on that side of the pond to go, whoa, we could do with that over here?
Yeah, I think you hit it spot on. I think that the kids are this generation is so tech savvy, and I think they are getting more and more responsible with their social media. And yeah, I think they know how to use it in a way that, maybe when, you and I were in high school, we didn't really quite know how to use it. So yeah, this generation is very, very tech savvy, and they're using it to their advantage.
For sure, I agree with you. And although you touched upon that enjoyment piece, and you talked about, covering games and covering that enjoyment, that buzz for it, what was your inspiration for the journalist side, for that coverage, for the writing, for the media?
I loved writing and journalism from such a young age. When I was at my grandpa's house when I was little, I would always just pick up his newspapers and read, and then go play checkers with my grandma after reading the paper. So it just was always a natural feeling. I always say I'm not good at math and I'm not good at science at all. So medicine and biology and all that stuff was out of the question for me. And I always enjoyed sports. I always knew I wanted to be a sports journalist. Don't get me involved in the messy politics and stuff like that. I don't want any piece of that. I just love being able to tell stories for athletes. Some of my favorite pieces to write, even nowadays, is just feature stories. Any chance I get, I'm writing a feature story. I love telling people stories, and it's a really, really huge responsibility. And it's something that I don't take lightly. Like, I'm talking to, now I'm getting to the age where some of the people I'm talking to are younger than me, even in the professional game, and just that vulnerability to tell your story to someone that you don't even know and trust them to write your story. I didn't really think about that until a couple years ago. So yeah, journalism always just stuck out to me. I had a really, really good journalism teacher in high school who really helped me crack down on technique and learning the craft of it. And yeah, there was so often you have kids in high school. I have no idea what I want to do. I have no idea what I wanted to do. From the moment I walked into Hopewell High School as a freshman, I knew I wanted to be a journalist. And that has never gone away, even now at 27.
I love that again, and I keep saying I love that because I actually do at every point that you say, and certainly that outlook and having a great teacher and really approaching that in a certain consideration. But when it say comes down to the media side, then, and saying being a journalist, someone who's doing the writing, do you believe that is completely different or is quite different from being a podcaster? Then,
Yeah, 100%. I haven't done too many like podcasts with athletes. I usually just do podcasts with fellow journalists and soccer friends, as I like to call them. Um, I don't mind doing that, podcasts with journalists, but I much rather like doing it written wise. And I think they like it too, just being able to have that, whether it be in the paper, have that link. Yeah, it's a huge difference, I think. And a lot of times too, like podcasts, like, yeah, you can edit them, but a lot of the time it's just like, okay, you're doing the interview and it's just boom, it's up there. Whereas on doing written, you have to do the interview, you have to transcribe the interview, and then you're probably not going to use all those quotes that you do in an interview. You want to find the ones that tell the best story.
and I'm with you there, and I completely understand from that podcasting point of view, and so in which I'm trying to allocate more time to do rather than just get episodes out there and make sure there's a bit more maximization. So a few of the guests which I've had on, I've sort of considered them going, oh, I must be having favorites because I'm sharing more content with my newer guests rather than the previous guests. But that's just about following up and trying to do a lot more to share that content rather than just record an episode and get it out there. But there is certainly those differences. But I liked how you touched upon those political sort of spheres, because that is one of the questions which I have planned in, and it's not too political, but it just touches upon it because I know that it does play into consideration a little bit, and that's something in the back of my mind. I have a little sort of red light sort of flicking in my mind as I produce every episode, etc. And as said when we were chatting, none of this podcast is a media interview to try and catch you out. I don't work for the Sun or the national newspapers, anything like that. So it's just a nice casual podcast, realistically. But when it comes down to it, then before we get to that question, from your experience of watching sport and a variety of games, what has been the best in-person experience as a journalist that you've witnessed and experienced firsthand?
I don't think anything will top when I saw um, my first NWSL championship. That was really cool. From a game point of view, I really, really enjoyed that. That was in North Carolina. It was the Courage and the Chicago Red Stars, and it was really cool. I mean, they put on a great show. I got to meet, people that I work with for the first time in person. So that was awesome. But also, one thing I really, really enjoyed was covering the NWSL draft last year, or I guess I should say this past year. It was in January. It was over in Philadelphia, so I got in the car and I went, and I loved the rush of it, and I loved just the opportunity to meet these new players who were coming into the league. And they were some of the best interviews I had because they were so excited about getting drafted, making their dreams come true, and be able to talk to them for the first time as a professional athlete. That was a really special experience. And it was funny because I had went with my boyfriend. We made a vacation out of it. So we went to see the Liberty Bell the next day after the draft. Well, we had saw a couple of the players. They were like, I remember you. I remember you. And I was like, yeah, I remember you. They were wearing, the T-shirts and stuff of the teams that had just drafted them. So those two, I would probably say, were the best experiences so far in person.
What a buzz, what an experience. And again, it is so wonderful to see that connection and that recognition for that collaboration and connection. And so, even though you've had those amazing experiences and what you've been able to cover as a journalist, just as a sports fan, then, and flipping that around, what is one event that you really love to see that you haven't seen yet, which you really would have a buzz off, that enjoyment from?
Probably MLS Cup. It's funny. They just announced that only the teams from the Eastern Conference could host, and Cincinnati and Columbus are still in it. And Seattle is my favorite team. So I had told my boyfriend, I said, if Seattle was playing in either Cincinnati or Columbus for MLS Cup, we are going. Like, there is no question about it. We are going. So yeah, probably MLS Cup. And then just, as a person from Pittsburgh, the obvious answer too is just seeing the Steelers in a Super Bowl. My dad has been to, I think, 4 out of the 6 winning Super Bowls. So a little bit jealous of him. Got a lot of catching up to do. I don't think it's going to be this year, with how the team's doing, but someday, when the Steelers make it back to the Super Bowl, I would love to, even if it's just standing outside of the stadium, I would love to go see that.
Again, I think they're such wonderful events, and what an opportunity and experience that your dad has had over the years to do so. And I think that's great memories that he has had and taken away. And that's something that I'm a little bit jealous of, being in the UK, and something which I hope to get out to the US to do is, watch the basketball, watch baseball, even though I'm not the biggest fan of baseball, but I'd love to witness it and see what it's like. To go and see basketball, and then a college game of basketball and see the difference. To go and see American football being played, to go and see soccer, to go and see ice hockey, that NHL, to do all those sort of combinations of different components of sports which you have. The sport in America is so cool. So as a journalist, as someone covering sports and being able to go out and witness them, wow, what a time to be a journalist rather than be a coach at times, because you get the wide array rather than just one sport. So if you're coaching it, for example.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I've been able to go as a fan to a lot of games and as a reporter for a lot of games too. So again, balanced. It's been awesome.
Absolutely, and I think that's brilliant. But when it comes down to it now, and touching upon that political sphere. As a journalist, do you find or feel that there is a lot of political considerations when writing about games and covering sports? So, for example, in the sense of having to adhere to any guidelines, the optics in terms of what you may write and how that's portrayed and that's perceived, relationships, the player aspect and considerations, player responses, clubs, coaches, and how their growth in the long term could come back to bite us if we're a journalist, if we're in the media, and we have those optics which we portray within our writing and coverage that isn't well perceived within a positive outlook to them within their mindset or perspective.
Whew. I don't know if I would say from like being a freelancer for the local paper, because everybody is just happy to be like involved, especially with, you know, this area that I'm in is a very, very, very big football area. So soccer, and I mean basketball gets a good amount of coverage, but soccer doesn't get a lot of coverage. So anytime like they send me to a game, or I get to do a story on anything soccer, they're just happy to be in the paper. So I can't really say that. I think from like a professional like league setting, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, and I'm at the point past the point of caring. There are some really, really good PR, media contacts in the National Women's Soccer League. Orlando has some of the best people, like hands down. What Jackie and company do down there is really phenomenal. Never have had an issue there. Kansas City is pretty solid from the times I've had to work with them. But there are also some teams that just have awful. I mean, we always say it's a league that we want to cover that doesn't want to be covered at times. And a lot of the politics, I think, come from that point of view of, it took me 4 months one time to get an interview with a player. And it just became one of those things that, her and I knew each other because she's from Pittsburgh. And so I just hopped into her Instagram and I said, hey, do you just want to knock this thing out? I'm tired of waiting. She knew I was looking to do it. So we were just like, let's just knock this thing out. So yeah, there's definitely some hurdles to go through, when wanting to tell the story. And if any PR people are listening to this, if anybody ever asks me, hey, like, we'll do this interview, you do the interview, yada, yada, yada. Hey, can we read the story before it gets published to make sure it's okay? No, that's a huge red flag. No, it is not my job to give you the story back. There are some people who can't take honest reporting, and some teams who can't take honest reporting, but I mean, that's just what it is. It's like, you have to be honest to the readers. Everything isn't sunshine and rainbows and happiness. It's, there's struggles to get to the top, and that's in our everyday life too. So yeah, there's definitely hurdles in that regard, I would say.
And when it comes down to it, I think that's, again, important considerations. And I love what you say about that sort of print, that outlook, and having that sort of, you're not bouncing the story back to them so they can get the optics, that perspective to change the dynamic, the dialogue, that perception of it. Because what they've said and what that comes across in terms of when it comes to that journalistic outlook, that's how it is going to come across because of what is out there and how you write it. And again, everything is portrayed how we want it to be portrayed. So the other day I was having a conversation around data and how positive that looked, and the consideration was, well, data portrays anything that we want it to portray, because we can have so many stats and statistics, we can actually pull out different ones we want and make it look positive against the negatives that come with it. So I think that is an important consideration for any, again, player which is out there, because it can come across in terms of what they say and share, that will remain with them, and how that does come across from a journalist point of view. But, just as you said that, thinking of the film The Nightcrawler, what a tremendous film, and really, when it comes down to it, and even just as a podcaster, even though this isn't like a full-time job, this isn't something that I get paid to do, it's more of something that I enjoy to do and hopefully build upon it and develop the journalistic skills. And certainly this isn't something that I ever considered when I was in high school or in that pursuit of career, and something that has developed from COVID times into what the podcast is now, and given me more ideas to explore it. But The Nightcrawler, I think, wow, what a film, because because he is what you might say ballsy and goes out and pushes himself and chucks himself into situations, and he's following and he's proper on it and he's hands on and he's badging his way into offices, etc. And I think sometimes, should I just do that? Should I just get in the Instagram DMs a bit more? Should I push? Should I just be cheeky and ask that question? I'm like, it is over social media, so I've sort of got that nice sort of cushion if they bounce back something horrible, because I can just delete the message or just forget that it's there or anything, because it's social media and it'll hit different rather than in person. So when it comes down to that as a journalist then, and in consideration of, you know, being this great person which you are, and sometimes the way that we might be is we might hold off a little bit. But as a journalist, are you like push, get in, bang, can I be cheeky as possible? Can I write this? Can I do this? Or is it more, yeah, let's go with the flow and see what happens?
I would say I'm a little bit more cheeky about it. Yeah. I mean, especially if it's like, you know, the runaround I was getting from this club for 4 months is, well, we just hired a new comms person. Well, now you have to talk to the VP of marketing. Well, now you got to do this and this and this. And they kept bouncing me back and forth with each other. And I said, what is going on here? How hard is it to schedule a 15-minute interview? So yeah, it's crazy. The things you got to deal with as a reporter, it's crazy. But yeah, I would just say that, yeah, I'm a little bit more cheeky about it, and I don't have an issue with that. I really don't. If people have an issue with it, then that's tough.
I think that's great, and the reality of it. But when it comes down to it, then, because you watch a lot of sports, and in consideration, although you don't have metrics, you do have a wide array of what you get to see and observe, and so naturally over time you get to build up that experiences which you've had when you're younger, those experiences which you have as a coach, and what you get to see as a journalist in those observations. When it comes down to those considerations, have you ever considered leaving journalism and taking up, say, an analyst role within the sport due to your love, passion, experience, and knowledge of the game from that journalistic outlook and input?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So, as a journalist, you get to watch and observe a lot of games, and therefore you get a lot of knowledge, experience, insight, as well as that love and passion. So, have you ever considered, or maybe consider, leaving journalism to become an analyst within the team or analyst within the sport, to write about it or review or support from a different component and experience that is sort of relatable to journalism?
Yeah, I think, you know, I read a lot of the analysts that we have at Equalizer, and one of them I have to give a shout out to is Blair Newman. He just does, he looks at the game differently than anybody else, and I'm always impressed with how he writes his analytical stuff. And I know my limitations, and I know that that's not my strong suit. I've been blessed for the last 5 years to be, or maybe 6 now, the color commentator, the analyst for the local women's collegiate soccer team, the Pitt women's soccer team. They're actually in the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament for the first time. So in that sense, yes, but not in a written sense, I wouldn't say.
I think that's something definitely to really broach in terms of being another freelance and the opportunity which could be out there for you. But when it comes down to, say, that research and conducting that preparation for, say, an interview for a game, for something which you know is up and coming, how much time and preparation do you do within that research aspect?
I try to dedicate at least an hour to it, sometimes 2 hours. It just depends on how much is there. I do like to go into my interviews, you know, prepared for, it's a little bit different. If it's for a feature, yeah, I'll spend about like an hour, you know, researching the player's background and whatnot. If it's just for a press conference, maybe 15 minutes to see what the latest, you know, buzz has been around a certain team. But yeah, I think it just depends on the situation. And usually, though, it's about an hour.
I love that, and I think that's really important to have. So definitely consider that social media portrayal into that research you might have conducted prior to this interview. But when it comes into it, then, as that journalist which you come across as someone who's passionate, someone who's got that love, someone who's got that enjoyment, but someone who is cheeky to ask questions, what kind of journalist do you feel that you are, and how do you portray that in your work and your coverage? Do you always come across as passionate and loving, or is it more of get to the point, the detail, or is it more of big brash, lots of explosive moments, lots of explosive insights to really share with your readers, your viewers, your listeners, etc.?
I think the way I just want to be seen as a journalist is a listener, because I like to let the interviews pretty much speak for themselves. Yes, I watch the games, and yes, I see what's happening in the games, and I take notes. But what the players and the coaches say is a lot more important than what I'm seeing, because they're the ones actually doing it or coaching it. So I think from a journalist point of view, I want to be seen as a good listener, but also just somebody who knows what she's talking about. In the subjects, I know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I get asked for the paper to cover, gymnastics or baseball, and I'm not up to speed on those sports as much as I am basketball and soccer. So, anytime like I have to cover baseball, I usually take my boyfriend with me because he is a huge baseball fanatic, and I know I can ask him questions. But yeah, I like to be seen as a good listener because I like to let the players speak, and the coaches speak for themselves.
Good insight in terms of what you do as a journalist and who you are as a person. So certainly the type of approach that I try to take is everyone that I interview and how they want to portray and come across. I try to make the episode about them rather than about me, and make sure it is a dedicated episode and what features they can have. But having volunteered as a basketball coach and being involved within soccer, then do you believe being involved in these sports within a coaching capacity, that these experiences have provided you with a stronger insight into sports coverage as a journalist, or do you believe that a journalist has provided greater experience in terms of your coaching and how you may explore that?
Honestly, I don't think so. I'm not really, like I said, I'm not really the X's and O's type person. I'm more or less just kind of like I'm like the motivator more than anything on the sideline when I'm coaching. Just, I'm watching the game and I see what's happening. And I'm definitely like an analyst more on the sideline because I'm like, okay, these are corrections we need to make the next time we bring the ball down, or this is the thing that we need to correct at halftime. But from a journalist side, like I just like to tell the story. So I would say, just like as a coach, I'm more or less. I don't think the journalism really influences me too much in that regard.
And when it comes to the basketball coaching and soccer coaching, which you do you have a game, or which of the sports are you more passionate in on a sideline and have a lot more energy going to coach the team to get them out there? Is it more soccer or more basketball?
I love to watch soccer, but I love to coach basketball. Like I got into soccer coaching because I enjoyed the people I was coaching with and the kids that I had about um 4 or 5 years ago maybe. And then when I moved to Florida, I took a break and then I came back and I didn't do it. I didn't do it last year. This year they needed some help. They needed some coaches. So they asked me to come back and do it. I was really glad that I did it. I had a really good group of kids. Um, we weren't the most successful team, but we had progress, and that's the biggest thing I could ask for. But as a coach, I've been a 10-year basketball coach for a reason. Number one, they keep asking me to come back, which is kind of surprising. I would think they'd want to be rid of me by now. But I love basketball. There's something so special about it, and I don't know. They say that the worst players make the best coaches, and I'm a really good coach. I was a terrible player, but I just basketball. I am kind of more of that X's and O's person. I can be with soccer. I'm just like kick the ball and run and good luck. It's funny with how much soccer I do watch and how much I write about it and podcast about it. I can't seem to be the analytical type of soccer coach. And that's okay. Like we have another coach who is more that X's and O's type. But I'm definitely more the motivator in that regard. And in basketball, I can be a little bit of both, which is nice.
I get you completely there because I love boxing for what it is, and I'm not more of the technical detail in boxing of going, oh, he's dropped the punch there, he's landed those combos, and I will pick up on it, but I'll look at boxing from more of a fan perspective and that enjoyment rather than an analyst. Whereas football, I'll always be analysing, going, well, he needs to move there, we need to pull him out, he needs to come across, we need to shift the shape, etc. If I'm watching a game, etc. But when it comes to say coaching basketball to coaching soccer, I know that you said you're a little bit different in terms of how you approach that mindset. So therefore, when you coach a basketball session to a soccer session, and say I came to both with two different groups, and I was to observe you just generally, would you say you're a completely different coach than you are in basketball coaching that team than you are in soccer, and that passion and the way that comes across?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, passion-wise, I'm totally invested in what I'm doing. But in basketball, I can run drills a little bit better than I can in soccer. Thankfully, I have two really good coaches in soccer that I've been with this past year who are really good at setting up drills and whatnot. I'm almost like the equipment manager. I set out the cones and stuff, and then I watch, Coach Brian explain. And I'm like, okay, now I can do it. Now I can explain it. Now I can, show these kids if they have questions. But I'm a big motivator when it comes to soccer because there's a lot of running and the kids, sometimes get tired. I'm like, come on, we can do this. We can do this. And then with basketball, I'm much better at doing drills. More on the defensive side than I am the offensive side, but can do both. And still just that big motivator, when we scrimmage and stuff, I'm just giving them, when we're warming up and they're getting tired for running, I usually jump in and I run with them to help them finish it out. So yeah, it's not really too different, but like X's and O's wise, it's definitely more basketball.
Such a great insight in terms of that mindset, that approach, and how you look at both sports, but what you might do with the players compared to one. And it doesn't take away from the passion which you have, but it just complements and demonstrates the love and maybe the hands-on approach that you have in one sport more than you have in the other. And that's a consideration that I have, that I was talking to someone within the university about recently, was like, I'm a little bit different within the classroom than I am on the football pitch. And I coach very highly, very high demanding, high intensity, high quality, whereas in the classroom I like it to be a bit more nurturing, a little bit more of that fun environment whereby they can learn through that enjoyment and the experience of being there. And I want that within the coaching capacity, but in that environment I want high quality, high standards as soon as they enter the soccer pitch, etc. But when you say have that sort of mindset, and you got like the brain here, and you have that coaching, that journalism, that job which you do, the combinations of life, and what you do as a freelance, would you say that you dedicate, say, 40% to coaching, 30% to journalism, and 30% to your job? Or is it like 20, 20, 20, 20? How would you sort of, if you were to look at figures, which I know you don't like, but if you were to look at them, how would they sort of allude if you were to give some numbers?
Yeah, I think it just kind of depends because like this soccer season, or just like this year, say the school year, I went back into coaching soccer. And so as soon as the soccer season, it was about July, maybe July to October, and then October to March starts basketball, and then March to June is soccer again. So it's pretty much coaching is pretty much year round. And basketball goes Monday, Wednesday, Friday for me. And when the season starts, I like to go to the boys' games because I like to support our guys, just as much as they support us. And then with my work, it's a lot of my job is certainly not a 9 to 5. It is most certainly not. I work evenings, I work weekends. It's kind of tough to quantify. Honestly, it's not really a 100% bar. It's kind of a 200% bar. And I would say it's about, looking at this past year, 100% coaching, 75% job, and then 25% journalism.
And if I was, say, like a line manager or someone within your life who was maybe, say, critical, or someone who could have that influence, and I had to say to you, right, Rachel, I want you to cut something off. I want you to cut maybe one or two things. And you really had to make that tough decision. What would you cut if you had to?
Probably soccer, probably coaching soccer. Still going as a fan because our school is very, very tiny. We have an eighth grade class of 10 kids this year. So we are a very tiny school, and I've gotten to know the boys just as well as I've known the girls. But still going to their games as a fan. But yeah, I would probably say coaching soccer. When I came back, from Florida, they asked me to coach soccer pretty much immediately. And in August of 22, my brother had passed away. And so I just told them, listen, I'm not ready. I'll be ready for basketball when basketball starts. But he had passed in the beginning or middle of August, and the season had started in the middle of August. And I was like, I went to like a practice or two, but I was just still feeling, just overwhelmed. I wasn't very happy-go-lucky like I am with the kids. And I just told them I'm not ready right now, but give me like a year and I'll be ready. And lo and behold, a year later, I'm coaching soccer again. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear about the loss of your brother, and but very open and appreciate that you have given a shout out to him and brought him across within your story, which is a really important piece, as you say, and how that brings that story across, and where you're at with coaching, where you're at within life, and how that has sort of played out. And when it comes to it, and that soccer can maybe take that cut from things, some things in life where it will go in the future, say that family, say having kids, you're working the late nights, you're working the weekends, it's not 9 till 5. Some things will have to give because other things start to take a little bit more, and they might take that 8% off us, and we got left 20% to focus on the job, etc. within the week, and that's part of things that play in life. So life always has those considerations, and certainly a piece to play. But when as a journalist and within communications, what do you want to see from most sports persons? So, for example, do you have any expectations or preferences when you speak to them? What you'd like to see, or that interaction you'd like to get from them?
Yeah, just don't be afraid to form those relationships. It's funny because I always tell people one school that I've been sent to a lot in with the local paper is actually my boyfriend's alma mater. So, he goes to the games with me in his Freedom Bulldogs hoodie. And I've gotten to know the girls on the soccer team who, again, they're a tiny school, play on the basketball team. So I've been able to form this relationship with these kids for about a year now. And coming into this season, they all wave to me when they see me at the games, and they all know Luke now, and they're like, when are you guys getting married? And like, it's they know us on a personal level now. So just not being afraid to have that personal relationship with the students and the coaches, and to just build that bridge for sure.
I think that's really important for, especially for when you have young players, those families listening, of what they could really bring across, and how they could build those relationships, or how they approach the media, or how they can utilize it in certain considerations, especially on the media platform or the social media platform, whereby we get to see them form a basis of so much those connections and those outreach. But for young players and families in pursuit of professional opportunities, as someone who has a lot of experience within communications and coverage, what are the biggest considerations that they must be aware of to really support them from that aspect of communications and media?
Just giving them a platform. I think just giving them a platform to be able to, advertise themselves and to show themselves off, and yeah, again, just being responsible with that. I think, giving a platform also instills a lot of leadership to be responsible. So I would say that.
And when it say comes to say, this journalism and maybe a possible outlook on a future, and someone who has a basis of coaching, if you had to give up the formality of coaching basketball altogether, and you knew that it was going to be a door closed on that, say for a solid 10 to 15 years, because you had children, or because other opportunities arose in your life, whereby you are doing journalism, you might be traveling the world, you might have to go left, right, and centre, and therefore can't make the commitments to training or games, etc. Would you be okay with shutting that door in pursuit of other possibilities within life?
I don't think I would. I love coaching basketball so much. And it brings me a lot of joy. Coaching basketball, I started at the age of 17. I needed a high school senior project, and that was it. And for some reason, they kept asking me to come back and welcoming me to come back. And it's just turned into something really, really awesome. And, being 17 to now 27, those are some very formative years. There's just some very crazy, chaotic years. And I don't know if I didn't have basketball, if I would be here right now. the kids, just their constant joy. It makes me feel like a kid again. I always like watch them at their games, their practice, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I was back in 8th grade again, just like messing up kids at other schools. It just, their joy gives me joy. And last season when I did coach, there were a lot of days where there was a lot of grief. And the kids really just kept me going. And I told them that at the end of the season. And some had known and some had not known about my brother's passing. But, just telling them like how much that it meant to me that I got to be with them that year. It was awesome. It was really, really something.
Well, how lucky they are to have you, and certainly play that piece within your life, and to certainly have them or to play a piece within their life as well. And so, okay, I approach you with, say, 2 cards, and one is that I offer you the opportunity into basketball on a full-time basis, and you get a complete future, the opportunity to progress in national teams or to go wherever you want with basketball. You get your licenses funded. It's all there for you. A job, the everything, the accommodation, boom, package, number one. But on the consideration of that, you have to give up journalism. Journalism can play a very minimal part of your life. You can do maybe some blog writing, maybe, some low-level stuff. But journalism as a consideration or pursuit as a full-time job isn't a possibility on that card. Would you take that card off the table, or would you be like, yes, this is the card for me?
I think I'm just selfish and want a little bit of everything. So I think I'd say no. I like the diversity of my life with coaching and my job and writing and social life and all kinds of things. But yeah, I'm a little bit selfish and want my hands in a couple different cookie pots.
I love that sort of saying, and I love that sort of outlook and perspective on it. And I think that just shows as well the importance of taking in on board of what we love, and not giving up one because we're in pursuit of the other, because we can enjoy many considerations, and sometimes it is that balancing act, and as long as we can get it right, we can enjoy those certain considerations, those aspects, and really piece them and bring them together. And as said, it can open up many doors. It can keep doors open, especially if you need to pick up more freelance work because you've got kids and we need a little bit more of the income, etc. So I think it does play a really big part in terms of the future, rather than going in a pursuit of, say, just one goal, one job, one sort of career pathway. And that combination is a really important concept. And so if you had to, say, label 3 non-negotiables as a coach in your basketball teams that you take away, what are your 3 non-negotiables that you bring into play?
That I'm a little confused. Non-negotiables that I bring, or like what I would expect from a team?
Do they differ?
Non-negotiables. Oh man.
I caught you off guard a little bit here, and that's not the point to
Little
sort of
bit,
chuck you on the
yeah.
spot.
There's a couple. Number one, especially since I coach middle school, is good grades. Like I always tell the kids, your schoolwork comes first and foremost. If you have to miss practice because you need to, do your homework, then that's an excuse. But if you're missing practice to just go hang out with your friends, that's something completely different. So number one, I would say grades, keeping their grades up, being good teammates. I am very big on representing our school well. Even, when I was playing, if I didn't like other kids from other schools, I still made sure to shake hands after games and say good game. It kills me when I see kids from our school and from other schools just like slap hands and don't say anything. And so just number one, grades. Number two, being a respectful teammate. And number three, just effort. Effort is something that, we've struggled with over the last couple of years, because I think being at such a small kids, like we have some kids who really want to play basketball, and we have some kids who just kind of do it to do it. And sometimes we struggle with that effort. And again, we want them to have fun. We want them to laugh, but we want them to also take it seriously. And, that's one thing we told our girls at the beginning of the year was, this is a commitment. Either you're in or you're out. And now as 7th and 8th graders, they're the top of the ranking at their school. So that expectation has been, laid out for them, and we're getting better at it. There's always still improvement that can be had, but we are getting better at it.
And so when it comes down to it then, are you more in the pursuit of player development or more in pursuit of success and standards?
Oh my gosh, player development. Yeah, 100%. We probably won one or two games last year, but our progress from October to February was just off the charts. This team, I think this year this team could really go far. We only lost one player last year to graduation. That eighth grade class was 3 kids, and we only lost one girl from our team. So we're pretty much returning the same unit with an addition of 2 players who are very talented. So I said this team could really go far this year and do something really special. And I would love to see that. And I know they want those wins and they want the program to be respected again. But yeah, player development is the biggest one for me. And we are already starting to see the team is really starting to gel together, and we're starting to see that.
And that's good to hear. And I'm glad that you are starting to gel and starting to see the products of that work rate and that player development piece from last year. And having picked up a handful of wins from last year and thinking of a player who I speak regularly to every day as a student that I get to teach and talking about football quite often with him. He currently plays for a team which have lost every game this season. And so when I have conversations with him, I can see he's very demotivated. He's very upset by it. But from a coaching point of view and winning a handful of games last year, how did you keep and how do you keep your team motivated on the basis of, say, winning a handful of games in a competitive league?
We would always highlight the progression that the kids had, and that was the same with soccer this past year. I think we won maybe 2 games in a really tough soccer season. But we always just would highlight that there is progression, and we as the coaching staff would see that. And if we lose a game, it doesn't help if we throw the clipboard down and we get mad about it. You have to go to your team with the right attitude. And of course, there were stern talkings to last year when we would tell them, like, we're telling you guys how to improve and you're not doing it. And they got better with that last year. And they got better with that at soccer this year. So just, yes, correcting the mistakes and pointing out the mistakes, but also giving the compliment that the kids deserve when they are making those improvements.
I think that's a really important piece to bring into play and certainly have that consideration. And say for any player that you work with and you work with for an X amount of time or whatever period it is, what would be the bottom line thing or the bottom line product that you'd like them to leave with? Even if it's not a scholarship or not a professional outlook, but bottom line they're leaving with something part of Rachel's program that they could always look back on, always value in life, what would it be?
I would just say, being being a better person. I would hope. Like, my kids don't need to be the best 3-point shooter by the time they leave our school. I just want to see them be better teammates, and I have seen some kids leave the program as better teammates. And then I think just from a talent wise, just instead of giving like 75% of effort, giving 100% of effort. So I think those two definitely.
I think that's such an important piece and part of the play whereby they can leave the program and have something in that pursuit of it. As coaches, we can always reflect, and as a team, we always try to instill that within our players, within our athletes. But what does reflection mean to Rachel? What is reflection?
I think just taking a second and like really, really just kind of not dissecting things per se, but that's a good question. I would probably say just like, that's a good one. Just being able to appreciate your team a little bit more, and appreciate again the positive changes and the positive progressions. And then reflection would probably be like, okay, if there is like a negative progression or I guess regression per se, okay, how do we correct this? How do we excuse me, how do we figure this thing out to correct it? Yeah, I would probably say that.
I love that, and I think that's brilliant. And when it comes to this team selection, that team building, do you piece the team around your most talented players? Do you piece them around the players more in form? Do you have a selection criteria which you have? Does that differ? How does that tend to look on the selection and basis of your teams?
We told our kids this year there are certain rules that we have to follow being in a Catholic school and in a Catholic program, and playing in a league within the diocese. So we don't play public schools unless we scrimmage them or do a tournament, but we don't play public schools. So when they're in, the third and fourth grade basketball, okay, each kid has to get in for 4 minutes of the quarter. We play 8-minute quarters. And then in JV, okay, everybody has to get in at least for 8 minutes. Okay. Well, in varsity, which is my group, there's no quota. And I tell those kids all the time, listen, like, as a coach and coaching a Catholic school, it is definitely a big deal for me to get these kids in. And, I'm the co-head coach with another coach, Brian. And so both of us will say to each other on the sideline, like, hey, this player hasn't gotten in yet. Let's give her a couple minutes here. But really this year we have said as a coaching staff that if you are not at practice and you're not putting in the effort, then I don't, we have, I think, seven 8th graders and 2 7th graders. I said, if, a couple of the 8th graders aren't at practice and those 7th graders are consistently showing up and putting in the work, those are the ones who are going to play, because they've earned their time. So just, showing up, they don't always have to have the best practice, but just showing up and being there, because we really do struggle sometimes with attendance.
I think that's an important piece, especially around that participation, that commitment, that effort of turning up, which fits in part of those non-negotiables. And it's an interesting insight in terms of being a Catholic school and who you play in terms of those public schools, etc. But it's been interesting to certainly approach this. And as I've done my research and done a bit of background in terms of preparation, a lot of your profiling and background was journalism, was media, was coverage. And on the flip side of that, I was trying to consider how this can really benefit families, benefit players, and try to have that outlook, and then try to revert into coaching and try to build that big picture and piece. And even though we've had more of a focus on your background, your upbringing, some touch on religion, then going into a big sort of media piece in terms of the percentage of this episode. I know maybe the coaching insights hasn't been covered as much as such, but I felt that the media piece played such an important part of who you are and what you do cover, that it covered the majority of this episode, and again building that big picture, but played such an important message to relay of someone who I haven't had on a podcast, or someone of your background or caliber in terms of that media, that journalism, that outlook, which could bring something of a different perspective, which is really beneficial as an episode to those listeners. So I really do appreciate it, and I hope that was okay with you, Rachel, because I know we were talking more about the coaching insights, but hit on journalism more. But before you go, I'm just going to fire some quick fire questions at you. And number one, you've already answered previously, which is a great answer, but a little bit kicking the teeth for me, but I'll let you off on that one, choosing basketball over soccer. How dare you? But if you could draw upon your most favourite basketball player of all time, who would it be?
Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan is the reason I got into basketball, which is very ironic because he is a power forward who is very tall, and I was a power forward who is very short.
Top answer. Who is the best soccer player in your mind of all time?
Oh, geez. Women's, I would say Marta. On a more defensive side, I would say Becky Sauerbrunn. For the men, attacking wise, I am a huge fan of Ronaldinho. Big Ronaldinho fan. Also got to throw in Leo Messi. I'm not impressed with Ronaldo. I don't care if you score 1 million goals against Gibraltar and Liechtenstein and whatever. I'm not impressed. And then on the defensive side, I've always been a really big fan of Thiago no, not Amalda. Who am I thinking of? The Brazilian guy.
Which one?
Thiago.
What, the defender?
Thiago Silva. Yes. I've always been a huge Thiago Silva fan.
Love that. As a Chelsea fan, that's a great answer. As someone who has Ronaldinho as one of their all-time favourite players, what a top answer as well. So I absolutely love to hear those. If you could move to any country to coach, where would it be, or any country to live in and enjoy?
Italy. Italy. My boyfriend got me on the Italy hype train.
Again, such a great answer being from an Italian family and heritage. So you are really nailing these answers if you were to get a job interview, for example. So that's how you get in. If you weren't involved in sport or journalism, what would you be doing?
So my family owns a trucking business, so I probably would have gone into the family business or worked with cars or something. I wouldn't have done what my mom does on the accounting side. I would have done more of what my dad does on like the hands-on and the driving side, I think.
Love that. Who was or is your role model?
Uh my parents, both of them. I mean, they started their business out of nothing. They're just really, I'm biased here, but they're just really, really good people, and yeah, they're awesome. I love my parents.
I love that, and there's nothing wrong with a bit of bias when it comes to parents, families, and those who are close. What is your biggest pet peeve?
um, oh, my biggest one, probably being late. And that's very ironic because my boyfriend now makes me late to absolutely everything. Um, gotta love him. Gotta love him, but he makes me late to everything.
Fair play. He's had quite a few shout outs, so he's doing very well. Fair play to him. What is your favourite film?
Jaws.
Good
Jaws.
selection.
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
I love that for sure. What is your favourite TV show?
Right now, I'm obsessed with The Crown because we just watched the first part of the final season, and I'm rewatching it now. Oh my gosh, I just love The Crown. But I am a big fan of adult comedy, and adult animation. So I'm a big Family Guy fan and Bob's Burgers.
Good choices. Definitely, I love a little bit of a series like that, and I tend to try and hide that from some people. Um,
And Futurama. Futurama is goaded.
Hey, I remember watching Futurama once, and my mum said turn that off straight away, just because she couldn't stand anything like that. But it definitely something that I inherited in terms of that animation, that adult side. What type of music do you like?
I listen to everything, but I'm very much I like a lot of indie and like soft rock music, alternative music.
Good choices. Do you have a nickname?
Um, I don't like it, but there are only certain people who are allowed to call me Rach. And I really just have two priests who call me Rach, one of them being my very close friend. And he'll go, Rach, Rach. And then the other one, who's a little bit older, will say, Rach. So I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it is what it is.
When working with children and young people or any individuals, I always try to call them by their full name until they go, no, I prefer this or I prefer that. Because I remember sitting in a school once, a teacher who just started sat next to me. I never once spoken to her, and she said, "Hi, I'm Molly. It's not Moll. It's not anything else. It's Molly." And I went, "Nice to meet you, Molly." And I've always taken that on board ever since, as in the back of my mind.
Yeah, and it's funny because I do the opposite. I just call, like, if I meet an Emily, I immediately call her M.
Yeah, sometimes I get in that and I'm like, oh, I hope that's okay. I hope that's okay. I hope I'm in here in terms of building that relationship block. If you could do one thing in life, what would it be?
Oh, if I could do one thing, probably go back and visit Russia. Definitely not in the political climate now, but I would love to go one day and see the country where I'm from.
I love that for sure, and it is a country that I'd love to just experience and see, just to see what it's like. Because I think as a country, in terms of what it has, in terms of size, stature, expectations, political sphere, that military side, I think there's a lot of sort of considerations and something just to walk around and experience and go, pretty cool, pretty scary, pretty luminous. A bit like Korea as well. I'd love to just go there and experience the feels of it. Very scary, but I would just love to feel it. A bit like Vietnam, countries like that. But definitely a good country. If you could recommend one book, what would it be?
I love Daniel Silva's books. They're very espionage. So I would recommend anything by him. My favorite of his is probably it's called The Moscow Rules, and it's phenomenal.
Interesting. I'll have to write that one down and take note of it. What are you most afraid of?
Stink bugs. I don't like the noise they make. I really don't. Like I make my dad come and kill them. Or I get the really like the sweeper with the really long. I just don't like the noise that I can handle spiders, I can handle cockroaches, snakes, whatever it is. But the noise that the stink bugs make when they fly is not for me.
Fair enough, and nothing wrong with that. And a final one. What makes you happiest within life?
Being with my like friends, definitely. My boyfriend and my friends. I just love having a good time with them, and discovering new restaurants or just hanging out. It's a lot of fun, and I love traveling too.
Such a pure answer, and you have such a career which will take you into all those areas. But Rachel, I really appreciate this episode, and it has been such, as I said, a great insight in terms of media, that journalism side, and that piece of religion which we've been able to cover with that coaching consideration, finishing on such a nice piece as well at the end. But I really do appreciate your time and getting this organised so quickly, and really getting a fantastic episode out there. So I do appreciate it, and thank you very much for the time, especially in the middle of the day, to allocate towards this.
Yeah, and thank you for dealing with my scheduling chaos and for making time for me. This was awesome. I really appreciate this.
Not a problem. Well, anytime, and stay in touch, and keep posting and keep sharing. And I look forward to reviewing and reading a lot more of your articles, and always being considerative, considering how I could improve in terms of my journalism. But again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, and enjoy.
Thank you, likewise.
Well, bye.
Yeah, I think it definitely has a big, overview into my life. Anytime I have to make a big decision, I always pray about it. I always try to take some time to get into the adoration chapel. I'm very fortunate to have young clergy around me. The parish I work at, we have three priests, and they're all under the age of 40. So they're all younger, they're all around my age, we're all millennials. And so, when I talk to them, I can talk to them. I say, okay, put on your friend hat. Okay, put on your priest hat. And so I have that nice balance too of really just having the accessibility to talk to people who are clergy and who are religious. I have a couple friends who are sisters, or consecrated and living in the world. And so I have a lot of friends who are really good faithfully and have really good faith lives, and are just completely accessible to talk to. And that's been a huge boost for me.